Did pirates really make people walk the plank? Did they have pet parrots? Did they say "arr"? Ahoy there. My name is Zach Lee, and I am the host of the Ideological Podcast and the director for the Institute of the Study. What is it called? I'm a director of it. The Institute for the Study of Philosophy, Politics, and Culture. It just kind of rolls off the tongue with those initial letters. And today we are going to be talking about a brief and interesting history of pirates. So I will be your host, Calico Zach, right? Captain Zach Sparrow. And so as we dive in today on what Stephen Hawking has called the greatest podcast of all time, which is pretty incredible. I was going to do the voice, but I thought that would be way over the top. It's very hard to quote him without doing his voice. Today, we're going to be talking about pirates and the history of pirates. We're going to separate myth versus reality, and it should be a ton of fun. Today's episode is brought to you by, you think it's going to be rum, don't you? Because it's pirates? No, that's too obvious. Instead, I've chosen liquid death. You get it? Because that's what pirates are. They're liquid death. Liquid death. Plunder some booty. They don't actually support Ideological Podcast. Please do not sue us. Okay. We're going to talk about the history of pirates. My background, I'm an intellectual historian, so I like the history of ideas, the history of philosophy, that kind of stuff. And today we're going to be talking about pirates. Who were they? What did they believe? Should be a ton of fun. I'm going to throw in some random pirate jokes here and there, just because why not? I mean, you should. As always, I get my research from a bunch of different things. I'm a big research guy, but a lot of the information comes from a very helpful naval historian, a guy named David Accordingly. He's an English naval historian, and he's also the former head of exhibitions at the National Maritime Museum in England. So this guy's like the pirate expert. Does that mean that he probably died as a virgin? Maybe, but who cares, because he knows a bunch about pirates, and pirates are fascinating. So let's jump in. Pirate stuff. First of all, let's define some of our terms. What is a pirate? Right? For some reason, when somebody steals like a movie or downloads it illegally, we say they're pirating instead of just stealing, which is weird. Like if somebody murders somebody silently, we don't call it ninja-ing. It's just murder. But anyway, we think of Somali pirates and Captain Phillips and the, I'm the captain now guy.
I'm the captain now.
What is a pirate? A pirate is simply a sea criminal. Okay? It's a naval robber, specifically, somebody that commits robbery or other crimes on the high seas. So there are pirates in the ancient world. There are pirates in the modern world. There's always been bad guys on the ocean. That's what a pirate is. Now, how is that different than a buccaneer? A buccaneer is a football team. I'm kidding. A buccaneer is the name given to pirates specifically around the Caribbean during the 17th and 18th century. So that's the 1600s and the 1700s. That's considered kind of the golden age of piracy, which is a pun because gold. What is a privateer? Sometimes when you talk about pirates, you will hear the term a privateer. A privateer would be a private ship that had permission from a government to attack rival government ships. So like if I worked with, if I was English, I could be a privateer and get this commission from the government of England to attack, let's say, Spanish or French ships. And so there was a bit of too much crossover between what is a privateer, kind of a legal pirate working for the government, and a pirate, like an illegal pirate, like a bad guy. What is a corsair? Sometimes you'll hear this term corsair that's used. That is simply a pirate in the Mediterranean. Remember, pirates are not just in the Caribbean, which is what we primarily think of, and for good reason, but their pirates around the Mediterranean were called corsairs. So, with that in mind, are we ready to get into some myth versus reality with pirates? Wait, they're coming for you. Death on the water, liquid death. Which is just a company that makes water. So it seems a little too intense. It's like if you're a pencil company and you call it something like murder pencils, and you're like, no, they're just pencils. First pirate joke. What is a pirate's favorite letter? R. No, not R. You want to say R. Rather, it's the C. Myth versus reality. Pirates. Let's start with the myths. You ready? Pirates made people walk the plank. That's a myth. They didn't make people walk the plank. I've read of one recorded account of somebody walking the plank, and it came from much later, I think it was 1829. So after the golden age of piracy. So that was, could it have happened? Could it have happened a couple times? Maybe, but that is generally a myth, which is sad. Now, pirates did have a plank that hung out over the water with a hole cut in it so they could use the bathroom. That's a different kind of thing, though. So anyway, that's a myth. What about this one? Pirates had gold as their primary treasure. That's what we think of, right? We think of a chest of buried treasure of gold, and that is also a myth. Their primary treasure were things like silk, tobacco, sails, spices, and listen to this one, slaves, unfortunately. So what a lot of people don't realize is that pirates were huge slave traders. They made a lot of their money transporting slaves. We never see that. We romanticize them, but a big part of how they made their money was by selling people. And it's really terrible because a lot of times, like if a pirate ship went down or sunk, they might have a bunch of slaves tied up underneath below deck. And that would actually be really terrible. Sorry, somebody's knocking at the door, but I'm not going to answer because it's probably a pirate. What about this one? Pirates buried their treasure. Is that true? That is also a myth. Because they want to spend their treasure. You just don't want to bury it and put it in the sand. That makes no sense. And so they usually wanted to sell or spend their treasure and not bury it. One exception to this is Captain Kidd, who may have buried some treasure off an island of New York, but the background to that story isn't super clear. So they didn't have treasure maps, right? So we think of X marks the spot. We think of treasure maps. We think of pirates burying their treasure. That's a myth. If you have a bunch of gold and you're probably going to die because you're in a dangerous profession, you go live it up. You don't just bury it in some sand on some island somewhere. That's ridiculous. Another myth when it comes to pirates, this is one that we have, is that pirates just slept below deck. So what's underneath the top of the ship? It's just pirates sleeping below deck. Is that true? No. Here's what they would have. Drinking water was kept in barrels on the ship, and animals such as cows, chickens, and goats were kept below deck. So you've got like this whole zoo thing going on underneath this deck on a pirate ship. Gross, smells, feces, disgusting. Pirates are gross, okay? Pirate costumes during Halloween can be a little bit attractive, but pirates themselves are gross. How about this? All pirates used a black Jolly Roger flag. That's what we always see, right? On the movies, they come up and they've got this swords or crossbones and a skull, and that also, it's not a myth that they used that. It's a myth that that's the only kind of flag that pirates use. They actually used a bunch of different kinds. They would use other nations' flags to trick people. Pirate flags would have things such as bleeding hearts, hourglasses to say that your time is up, death is coming, burning balls, let's call that great balls of fire, spears, swords, and also entire skeletons. Scarier than all of that is what is called the bloody red flag. So what they would do is they'd fly their pirate flag and come to take over your ship because they want your stuff primarily. And if you didn't surrender, they would raise a red flag, which meant they're going to freaking kill everyone on board. It means we will show no quarter. We will show no mercy. Everyone will die. So it's like, hey, here's our scary flag with a skull on it. Now's the time to surrender. Oh, you're showing some resistance? We will send you to Davy Jones' locker, right? So that's one of the myth versus reality of pirate flags. Here's another one, that pirate ships were huge. We see movies of pirates and we think that the ships are absolutely enormous. Most pirate ships were pretty small because, again, they're naval criminals. They're trying to go quickly. They're trying to get in, take stuff. They're heavily armed, but they're typically smaller so they can be faster and so they can hide. And they're not huge, these huge typical like movie enormous kinds of ships. They wanted to outrun other ships. They're not going to be as big as the big warships, for example, in the British Navy, which was the most powerful navy at the time. For example, a large pirate ship might have 40 guns. By guns there we mean cannons. The largest of British warships, though, might have over 100 guns and a crew of 850. So they are no match as far as firepower for like an actual naval vessel. They're typically smaller. So that's, again, another myth about pirates is that their ships were these enormous things. How about this one? You ready? Pirates said "Arr," and that they were primarily British. That's also a myth. Most pirates were, wait for it. What would you guess? What nation? You guessed it. The French. Wah, wah. Don't get me wrong. Good wine, good lingerie, but the French, just a bunch of pirate people. So most pirates were actually French. And then in the golden age of piracy, a little bit later on, there were a lot of English pirates. But we have a tendency to think they're only English. That's why they talk like this. And they are always speaking English. So there were Portuguese pirates, Spanish pirates, French pirates, English pirates, Dutch pirates, all kinds of pirates back in the day. Let's talk about some things with reality. So that's kind of sad. When you hear they didn't make people walk the plank, they didn't really have a hook hand like Captain Hook or something like this, we think, is anything we believe about pirates true? Well, yes, here are some things that you would assume about pirates that are true. They did dress the way that we picture them. Yes. They're wearing the naval coats, trousers, scarves, loose-fitting shirts, that kind of stuff. That is how they actually dressed. So good news. What you're thinking of as a pirate is probably similar to the way that a pirate actually looked. They did have parrots. Yes, it's happening, guys. Pirates, they're real, right? They're real. They did have parrots and monkeys as pets because, again, they're in these tropical regions. And so they would take these things as pets. Little monkeys and parrots and brightly colored birds and stuff they would keep as pets on the ship, which is awesome. They did have doubloons and pieces of 8 as currency, which you've probably heard of these things. By the way, a piece of 8 back then was worth about what $40 is worth today, depending on the market and inflation and who's in office and blah, 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 okay? They did use the Jolly Roger as a flag. Yes. Again, it wasn't their only flag. That was the myth, but they definitely had that as a flag. Now, why is it called the Jolly Roger? There's a lot of myth around this. Some people think that it is from the French Jolly Rouge. Other people, which has to do with like this pretty red kind of thing. The most common view, though, is that it's a combination of several things. It's showing death, but it's also smiling and it's happy. It's like calling it joyful dead or like happy, destruction or something like that. Also, and this is something people don't talk about much enough. This is a big part of it. The devil back then, one of the nicknames for him was Old Roger. So you have the Jolly Roger, the happy devil, or the joyful death, or something like that. And so it's meant to be this ironic thing where you see this smiling skull and you're like, why is it happy? Oh, they're also going to kill us. It's meant to have that weird irony to it. So there you go. Most pirates, as you would think, were single. Now, don't get me wrong. They are living it up with the ladies, right? The wenches, if you will. Women be wenching. But only about 4% of pirates were married. What would you do out on the sea while you're just bored, surrounded by a bunch of dudes? Well, pirates would pass their time drinking, swearing, blaspheming, gambling, singing, and playing music. Okay, so kind of a typical Friday night for a lot of people. Interestingly enough, there were very few gay pirates. One of the books that I was looking at, by the way, the best book on this topic is Under the Black Flag, which is by Cordingly, that guy I mentioned. It's so fascinating. It's really great, really well written. So highly, highly recommended. I took a lot of this info from that. But I think he mentioned something like, don't quote me on this, but I think there were like 2 pirates during this whole time that were executed for homosexuality. Which is interesting because, like, you think of people going to prison today and you're like, well, they'll just have to be prison gay for a while because there's only men around. But pirates just kind of waited till they got back to shore to find some unbathed women. They did drink constantly. Okay, so drunkenness and drinking and all of that was big for pirates. That is true. That is not a myth. In a lot of their records of execution, where they would kill pirates or hang them for piracy, a lot of them mentioned that they were drunk at the time, that they weren't fully in control. But just to put it in perspective, water wasn't very safe to drink back then. So in the 1600s, if you were a sailor in the British Navy, do you know what your drinking rations were? Your drinking rations each day was a gallon of beer and a pint of rum per day. No water for you, just way too much alcohol all the time. So these guys are constantly sloshed. The reason that they're seeing mermaids and stuff is because they are hammered, okay? They are hammered. Popular pirate locations do include the places you would think. Jamaica, Nassau, all these places where it's pretty, these little islands, but also other places off the coast of Africa like Madagascar. They were definitely missing teeth. Remember, there were no toothbrushes back then. Oral hygiene was not great. And their gums were typically bad because a lot of pirates would get scurvy. What is scurvy? Scurvy is this thing your body does that's gross when you don't get enough citrus. Citrus fruits, citric acid. I don't know. I'm not a medical guy. I'm a humanities guy. But anyway, eat your fruits so you don't get scurvy. Again, scurvy. This episode is brought to you by scurvy. Gross. Keep your blood inside your body. They also had, as part of reality, a pirate code. Let me read you. This comes from the Pirate Code of Bartholomew Roberts in 1722. Listen to this code. So this is what you would sign, even though you're this notorious criminal, and you rape and pillage and plunder, and you slave trade, and you do all this crazy bad stuff, you still have a pirate code. Because you can't, even thieves don't like when you steal from, they don't like when other thieves steal from them. Here's the code. Ready? Every man shall be called fairly in turn by the list on board of prizes, because over and above their proper share, they are allowed a shift of clothes. But if they defraud the company to the value of even $1 in plate, jewels, or money, they shall be marooned. If any man rob another, he shall have his nose and ears slit and be put ashore, where he shall be sure to encounter hardships. If any man shall be found seducing one of the latter sex, meaning women, and carrying her to sea in disguise, he shall suffer death. None shall strike another on board the ship, but every man's quarrel shall be ended on shore by sword or pistol. Holy shit, that's awesome. So, you can murder all these people. Don't fight on the ship. Don't sneak women on board, right? Don't steal from us. Steal from other people, or you're going to have a problem, right? So, next joke. A pirate walks into a bar, and he has the steering wheel of a ship shoved down the front of his pants. He can barely walk around, and he's here in the bar bumping into things. And the bartender says, "Sir, you realize you have a ship's steering wheel in the front of your pants." And the pirate says, "Arr, I know, it's driving me nuts." How would pirates torture their victims? On that note, how would pirates torture their victims? Well, one common form of torture involved wrapping somebody's head with tight cords until their eyes popped out and they died. Gross. Another thing they would do was called keel hauling. What is keel hauling? Listen to this. Pay attention. Today, we're more humane with the way we execute people. This is one of the things that they would do, is they would take somebody and tie their arms and legs, and then they would drop them down the front of the ship, drag them underneath the bottom of the ship till they got to the back. And then we actually have a little YouTube video. I don't know if we can cut in there to show you briefly what keel hauling was like. Now, remember, the bottom of a ship is covered with barnacles and splinters and all of this. So people would die by drowning. They would bleed to death. They would get torn up and lacerated on the bottom of that ship. And if your body scraped along the whole length of the ship and you didn't die, they did it again. Ugh. There is a case of pirates, and maybe more than one, but at least one, of pirates soaking someone's heart in spirits and then eating it. One of the things pirates would do to each other on board if they broke the rules like we just saw, or to other people, is what is called marooning. Being marooned on a desert island. You've probably heard of this. What they would do is they would say, "All right, here you go. We're dropping you off on this island, and you're just going to die slowly. We're going to leave you maybe a pistol with one bullet. So if you want to just end it, you can." But marooning was pretty common. They would bury people alive sometimes. I read one case of pirates making a woman stand naked in a barrel full of gunpowder with a wick in her face, demanding that she tell them where she hid her treasure. So other people would hide treasure, but the pirates would spend theirs. Again, pirates, they would cut off people's limbs, do terrible things. The craziest thing that I heard, and again, this comes from Accordingly, is that most extremely, there was a pirate who would cut someone's stomach, nail one part of their entrails, their intestines, to the ship, and then make them dance to their death by hitting their back with a burning log until all their guts fell out. I don't know if you've seen that deleted scene from the children's movie Peter Pan where they do that. It is very aggressive for little kids to watch. Let's talk about some famous fictional pirates. You ready? These are ones you've probably heard of. This is what we think of with pirates. There's a lot of like legend and lore mixed with reality. So here's a few. Long John Silver, right? The famous pirate who started that disgusting food chain where everybody gets sick. This episode is brought to you by Long John Silver. Long John Silver's. It'd be better to be marooned on a desert island than to eat our fish. Long John Silver and Treasure Island by Robert Louis Stevenson. Captain Hook, right? And Peter Pan by J.M. Barrie. The Dread Pirate Roberts, for some of my older audience in The Princess Bride. Captain Jack Sparrow, who's very likable in Pirates of the Caribbean. Edward Kenway in Assassin's Creed Black Flag, which is probably the best pirate video game, if that should even be a thing. You can download it illegally. It's called Pirating Pirates. And there's many others, right? But these are the characters we think of. We think of the peg leg, which, by the way, when we talk about myth versus reality, that's actually a real thing, that because they're on the ship and they're constantly in battle and there are ropes running by their legs and they're getting shot, they did lose limbs. And so you did have pirates that had no legs, walked with crutches. The peg leg thing was real, or some type of prosthetic leg. That is real as well. Okay. Let's talk about some famous pirates. Are you ready? Before we do that, I think it's time for another joke. Where does a pirate go after work? To the bar. Okay. What is a pirate's favorite movies? Rated R. What does a pirate drive to work? A car. No, a ship. Let's talk about famous pirates. Here we go. John Rackham, a.k.a. Calico Jack. If I had a pirate name, it would be Calico Zack. I like that. I think that's cool. He was a flamboyantly dressed pirate captain who would wear brightly colored clothes. He had a harem of mistresses off the coast of Cuba. He worked with Mary Read and Anne Bonny, two famous female pirates. These are women that dressed up like men and snuck into pirate crews and became these famous pirates, even though they were ladies. Jack Rackham, or John Rackham, worked with Mary Read and Anne Bonny. He seduced Bonny away from her sailor husband, so she has a type. She likes seamen. She likes men that are at sea. And he took her on board his ship. The women were eventually condemned to death for piracy, but were both pregnant, so they could not be hanged while they were pregnant. Mary Read died in prison. Calico Jack, John Rackham. Fascinating. Another real pirate. Now, this next guy kind of blurs the line between legal privateer and pirate. He's a guy named Francis Drake. You've probably heard of him. He's kind of a big deal. So there's Drake, the singer, and then there's Francis Drake, a much bigger deal. He's the first Englishman to circumnavigate the globe and not die. Remember, Magellan and his crew went around the world, again, which is a sphere, you dumb flat earthers. But Magellan died, right? He wasn't Magellan like a felon. He died, and so other people in his crew made it around. As far as the first Englishman, though, and the first captain to go all the way as a captain to circumnavigate the globe and not die was Francis Drake. He was more of a privateer, but the Spanish called him a pirate and gave him the name the Dragon. That is so sick. The Dragon, Francis Drake. He famously one time captured a ship, listen to this, called in Spanish the Cacafuego, or Shitfire. Okay? It's the name of the ship. Great name for a ship. If you're looking for a good ship name, highly recommend the Cacafuego. Bartholomew Roberts, right? Who took over who was, again, another pirate captain. He was captain of a ship called the Royal Fortune. He took over 400 vessels in his career. Okay? Bartholomew Roberts. I think his nickname, I can't remember. I didn't write this down. I think it's Black Bart because of that, because of his constant piracy. Henry Avery, another famous pirate. He pulled off one of the largest treasure heists in world history, in maritime history of all time. He raided an Indian treasure ship worth tens of millions of dollars today. Okay. He was a captain of the ship called the Fancy. Okay. So that's Henry Avery. Listen to this next one. Henry Morgan. You heard of this guy? You have. You don't know it yet. You ever heard of Captain Morgan when it comes to rum? He's always got his leg up, Captain Morgan. This episode brought to you by Captain Morgan Rum. Captain Morgan, making ugly wenches look a little bit prettier. Henry Morgan. So that's who Captain Morgan is named after. He was a knight, so it's actually Sir Henry Morgan. He was also the lieutenant governor of Jamaica for a while. So fascinating. Pirates in politics. There's already a lot of pirates in politics, if you ask me. William Kidd, Captain Kidd, is probably a pirate you've heard of. He was the captain of a ship called the Adventure Galley. He was a privateer turned pirate who was hanged for piracy, and his body bound in chains and displayed in London near the River Thames for years. So you're hanged, your body's wrapped in chains, and you just get hung up by the River Thames for years. So people walk by and they're like, hey, there's a corpse in chains hanging here by the water. And you say, yeah, that was Captain Kidd. They are not kidding around. And then most interestingly, you ready? Edward Teach. You know him by his stage name. You know him by his AKA, his alias, Blackbeard. Edward Teach, Blackbeard. Listen to this guy. This guy was a crazy moaf. He did have a black beard, and it was super long and also really high. It went up almost to his eyes. Okay, so a big black beard, Edward Teach. He used to tie ribbons into his beard. He would also put matches or wicks underneath his hat before battle and light them on fire. He had crazy looking eyes. He's got this big long beard with ribbons in it, and he's got wicks or matches underneath his hat on fire. So as he turns, there's smoke all around him as he's fighting. So he looks like a demon, okay? So he's got all this stuff going on. He was armed to the teeth. He would have up to 4 pistols strapped to him, a knife and a cutlass. He is rumored to have married 14 different women at different times. So he had 14 marriages. And most notoriously, he married a girl who was 16 in North Carolina. After sleeping with her all night, he allowed 5 or 6 of his crewmates to ravish her. He supposedly died fighting with 5 bullets in him and 20 cuts. He was captain of the Queen Anne's Revenge, which was a very large pirate ship. That one was unique in that it was very big and very well armed. That's Blackbeard. He's a sex-crazed, crazy, covered in smoke, huge beard, murdery people, dies like Rasputin where you just can't kill him. Blackbeard. Edward Thatch or Edward Teach. Fascinating. Let's talk about a few other fascinating facts about pirates, and then we will be done on our voyage. So, avast ye, pay attention. Other fascinating facts about pirates. Here we go. Pirates took part in the Crusades in the Mediterranean. Did you know that? We always just think of the Crusades of these knights on land going to fight the Muzzies, but instead, there were also Islamic pirates in the Mediterranean fighting each other. And I think there were also Islamic Muslim pirates, these Turks and stuff also that were pirating the other way. So pirates are very old. The concept of criminality is very old, and this is just criminality with water, right? So really the only superhero you've got to watch out for there is Aquaman, who's really a lame superhero because like most crime happens on land, and he's like, just stands at the beach, I guess, and is like, hey, why don't you come in the water and say that, right? Why you're just doing whatever you want on land. Other fascinating facts about pirates. Listen to this. I don't know that you're ready for this one. Who is the most successful, powerful, had the biggest armada of ships? Pirate person of all time. Ready? It's a chick. A pirate lady. Some of the most violent and successful pirates were actually in the South China Sea. Perhaps the most powerful pirate in history was a former prostitute named Mrs. Chang. She had 400 ships and about 40,000 people in her crew at the height of her power. This is the early 1800s. Isn't that fascinating? How old do you think the average pirate is? I think in our mind, we think of him as like 40. The average age of most pirates was about 27. So young guys. Most pirate ships had a crew of around 80. In between bouts of drinking, pirates would fire the ship's guns just for fun. So they'd be like, to my winch off of Hispaniola or something, and then they would fire the guns and giggle and get back to their drinking. There you go. Listen to this. Nassau, okay, this beautiful island, became a pirate republic. In the early 1700s, this island became a pirate-run state. So imagine you have a nation that is run by and for pirates, Nassau. You could come there, get your ship repaired, sleep with the whores, get you some rum, hang out with other pirates, and a lot of famous pirates were involved in this. Nassau, it was a pirate state, a pirate republic. Absolutely fascinating. You didn't know there was a pirate republic, did you? You didn't know there were all these nations and then an actual pirate nation, which is insane. Listen to this. Some battles were fought at sea during storms and even with water spouts, which are water tornadoes. So imagine you're out there and you see an enemy ship and they're firing cannons at you and you're firing cannons at them. And it's dark all around you. The sky is dark. It's like green and gray, and you see this huge storm coming. You look all around you and all you can see is ocean, huge waves, huge, white caps. It's you and another boat in the middle of a huge storm. Waves are hitting you, and then there are tornadoes going on around you in the water as you're fighting this sea battle. I'm not sure that I can think of something cooler than that. That's pretty cool. When pirates were hanged, listen to this. Because they had committed crimes at sea, they weren't tried by a traditional judge or something like that, because those are land judges. Rather, it was the Lord High Admiral, the one who was over things going on in the sea, that would try them. And when pirates were hanged, listen to this, what they would do is they would hang them in places where at high tide, the water would wash over their bodies. So it's as if to say, because you committed these crimes at sea, we are killing you by the sea, and the sea will wash over you, and you're judged by the Lord High Admiral. It's all sea stuff. It's really, really cool and really, really fascinating. There were some pirates, though, that that changed their ways, that repented. Cotton Mather, a famous Puritan minister, especially out of places like Boston, would call people to repentance. He was like a chaplain in a lot of the jails, which is really, really fascinating. So speaking of needing repentance, let me give you my last joke, and this one's a dirty joke. So if your kids are listening, maybe earmuffs them. What is the difference between a dinner party and a pirate orgy? A dinner party says, come as you are. A pirate orgy says, ours you come. I can't even. It's too much. Don't email me. I'll just delete it, and I'm going to keep telling my jokes. What do you think of pirates? That is a brief history of pirates on Ideological, where we talk about things that are interesting. Thank you for joining me. Thanks for being part of my crew on this voyage as we talk about the history and fascinating facts related to pirates. I hope that you join in next time.